For the Will of the Week, that's crazy. Got your ass in 4K, nigga.
I should have did it the other way. I did it to the camera.
But the Follow Me mindset, it bothers me is because people can't make an original idea. Is like this is another reason why reaction videos piss me off. And even in the sense of, I don't know if this is something like you can relate to. When I started podcasting, I started listening to podcasters less.
Okay.
Because I always had the fear of like, then it's kind of harder to distinguish between what's my idea and what's a stolen idea. If I'm watching a podcast, I might be talking about something they're talking about, but am I stealing their idea? Or am I coming up to my own basis about it? Now it's a little bit different. I'm a little bit more fortified in my stance on how I feel about a lot of things. So it's easier for me to be able to say, I'm going to say this even if it's unpopular opinion. But I think when I was early on in podcasting, I immediately stopped watching other podcasters because I was worried about not having my own idea.
I get that. I don't know, because I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to consume or whatever, and whatever I come up, it was formulated in my mind, and I'm hoping it doesn't. I don't think it's going to be exactly word for word verbatim of what somebody else said, but I just like having all these ideas swirling. I think that's where you can make the best connections. I think that's what makes comedy great, is when you can make connections that nobody else is making. And to do that, you have to consume information from a lot of sources.
Correct.
So I will listen to, different things.
But even in that aspect, I think I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I will include that it has to be a bunch of different sources. You can't listen to two people in one space and then be like, okay, now I know how I feel about this. It's like the one thing with the whole Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, that I kept having to wait for people to give their response was, I need to see the Genius breakdown first.
Right.
I need to see Rap Genius break it down before I tell you how I feel about the song. And it's like, what do you listen to music for? If you use Rap Genius to break down every song before you tell somebody how you feel about the song, that would be one thing. But if you're doing it specifically for this beef, and you have to do the Rap Genius breakdown before you give an opinion about the song, I'm like, then I don't really think your idea is yours.
Yeah. A lot of people regurgitate. It's kind of how we've been taught, you know? You read a book and then you recite what you read in the book. That's how we test. That's how we do
You're re-summarizing
education. Yeah, you summarize what was told to you by somebody else. It's kind of like you just are repeating. You're not really learning or understanding things.
It's that difference between like, tell me what the book is about, as opposed to tell me what you thought about the book.
Exactly.
So yeah, and then one thing leads to one thing's a Wikipedia argument, the other thing's a reveal. So that's the big difference between that. And that's one of my things about the Follow Me mindset is like, we push that agenda where people don't have space, or not space, they don't have the will to create their own original idea on how they feel about anything anymore.
Yeah, it's so funny because everyone has like a very strong stance on something, but a lot of times those stances aren't their opinion. And then when you press them on
somebody else's opinions that they then turn into facts.
And then when you press them on it, they can't. Sometimes I've had this before where I'll argue with somebody and they are like, oh, I got to like step away from the argument so I could go, listen to, the main, like CNN or read, what I mean, to formulate what my opinion is on the thing. As opposed to like, no, like what do you think about these set of circumstances? Yeah. It's like, I'm not changing anything. I'm just saying the circumstance is this, it's this, it's this. What do you think about it? I got to go read. I got to go look,
Go see what other people thought. I got to look at the reviews.
It's like, no, I mean, you don't, because they're going to have a slant to what they're saying. And if you're reading that, you're basically like, what is the slant that I should have on this thing? It's not necessarily like, what is my thought on, the situation or the thing. It's what is their slant on it so I can have my opinion. Yeah. And then when, it's funny when you start talking to somebody or arguing with somebody about something and then they get into a thing where they can feel themselves like changing their opinion. and then that makes them be like, I got to stop this argument. I got to shut this down.
Making somebody change their opinion, you didn't have to say anything. It's crazy, but it happens.
It's about to happen right now. I'm about to
Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, I'm about to change her.
Tune into the Patreon to find out more information about that. Go ahead and plug your podcast before I say bye to these.
Oh yeah, man, it's the Blerd Dad podcast. We're coming back for season 4. That should be coming this springtime now, probably in the next few weeks. As a matter of fact, we're gonna have some amazing guests. We've had amazing guests in the past. We like to have an unfiltered conversation about parenthood, and we like to nerd out about it. It's a really fun space. I like talking about it. Once I had my son, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll talk to other parents, see if nobody else knows what they're doing either. And we just go through it. We talk, we reminisce. Sometimes we talk about
PTA meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
Podcast format.
PTA. Yeah, that's crazy. But it's a fun time. We get to, know each other, talk about kids, talk about, different things that happen, talk about just raising kids in general, talk about our childhoods, talk about, how we came up. Basically anything. It runs the gamut. A lot of times we'll end up talking about comedy because that's the thing that I do. But we always try to have a little bit of a gem or something great in there about parenting and whatnot. So it's really good. And then we get to talk about things that we like to nerd out about. It's called the Blerd Dad podcast. As a Blerd yourself, what do you think defines Blerd? Because I say Blerd Dad podcast, and then when I'm like looking at it, I love it. I like what we do with it. But then sometimes I wonder, because I'm not talking about like a comic book or like like a specific niche, like an anime or something like that. I'm like, I wonder if people are like, oh, you're using the word blurred loosely.
I will actually argue against you and for them in the sense of, yes, when you use the terminology like blurred, you have to kind of categorize it around the black representation in the nerd fandom of comic books and anime and stuff like that. That's what people will say. Quinn, give me your take on that, because I don't know if is him just being black and a nerd talking about dadhoodship. Is that plausible? Because you're the gatekeeper to everything that is black culture.
But here's the thing that I know, right? Here's the gatekeeper. I'm talking to the gatekeeper right now.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
But I mean, my thought on it was, because I like to talk about the things that other people nerd out about as well. So I like if the show was, if somebody's talking about comic books and that type of thing, or anime or whatever, like I'll go into it and I'll go in deep and talk about it or whatever, but that's not necessarily the angle or whatever.
The angle of the podcast, but that is like a personal trait of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And but because of that, I get to explore more than just this not small, but this world of like comic books and pop culture and literature in that respect. We'll talk about pens deeply. We'll talk about like
I don't
special
even think it's
education
about that. In the aspect of Blerd Dad podcast, especially knowing you, I would sit there and just look at it like, yeah, he's a black nerd.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether the topic of your conversation is nerdy, I would still argue that yes, you have black nerd vibes.
Okay,
and not in a disrespectful fashion.
Yeah.
Because shit, Blerd Watch podcast. But I would say, okay, he's black nerd vibes and he's a father.
Yeah.
So like, we're listening to somebody, almost a nerd dad, talk about being a dad. On a podcast.
But it's just like we talk about like everything. Like somebody could talk about like their love of Crocs. Like, are those the CS the CS19s or what are they? Who you got on there? I can't read them from this far away. What, are those the latest or how? Because I noticed you got a new pair for every outfit.
I hate this nigga so much. And the sad part is I do get like a new pair of Crocs every 2 months. So
this nigga,
they're always just black or gray.
Do you have like a window or like a display case like people have for their Jordans?
No,
and
I just throw out the old ones every time I get new ones.
Do you have a glass encased Crocs that spin around in your bedroom? Like, I'm sure you could nerd out on that, but it's like you get to talk about whatever, anything the guest has that they nerd out about is great. And a lot of times we will end up talking about like some type of comic book thing or Star Wars or
but it's
Dune
more
or
like,
something like that.
And more than likely your fan base is going to be also black nerds that are dads.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes I wonder if I need to hit more, and this is the thing, changing for clout or whatever. It's like, do I need to hit more into the blurty aspect of that and get into like the anime? Because I could do it, but what I like about the podcast is I get to be me and I get to talk to somebody else and figure out what they nerd out about. Correct. You know what I mean? Like that is kind of what we're doing. We're talking, we're learning, we're talking about kids and whatnot, and then figuring out what they nerd out about because it might be something totally different.
It might be a TV show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's something that I've never seen
related.
before.
Yeah.
Something that I've never seen before. Or something that I've never, fishing, you know what I mean? Like you can nerd out about, fishing or.
So it's not even the aspect of being a nerd to a certain kind of fandom, but it's nerding out.
Exactly. Like the word nerd, like having a large amount of information to the point of being antisocial about a thing. You know what I mean?
Fair.
And so it's that aspect of it. And then, I am one in a lot of respects, but then find out what other people enjoy about the thing they nerd out about.
Yeah, I would consider that, like I would back you and say Nerd Dad podcast, Blerd Dad Cut podcast. But I don't know, Quinn, you're the gatekeeper, so let me know what you think because you're going to be the first person to comment on this. But yes, link for Blerd Dad podcast will be in the description.
And we're coming back, yes, season 4, probably mid-June.
Yeah, because literally I was talking to my homeboy about it. I was like, yeah, next guest is Glenn. He hosts a dad podcast. And I had only said dad podcast. And he was like, tell him to send a link because he's got a daughter.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
And I'm sure Q will be interested in it because he's got 2. But other than that, let me go ahead and do my SoundCloud playlist plug of the week. And then I will send you free niggas on the way and get into this Patreon because good job for you. I can only touch on so many topics because you're here.